Hi, I'm Sam and welcome to another video. Today we're going through the 26 books that I have read so far in 2024 from worst to best. Let's jump right in. I figured this was a good video to start my booktube with. That way you guys can kind of get an idea of the books that I have been reading. Now please take all of my opinions with a grain of salt. These are just my personal opinions. I'm still new to the whole booktube thing, so please bear with me. And I'm trying to get better about my rating system because I feel like sometimes I can be a little bit too nice, or I end up wanting to change the rating like 2 days later because I feel bad. So we're gonna go through this together, but some of these ratings might change. And be sure to let me know down below if you have read any of these, what your ratings were, what were your best books, your worst books of 2024 so far. I would love to hear everything. Starting with my worst book of 2024 so far, coming in with a 2-star rating is Run on Red. Now I read this on Kindle Unlimited, so I don't have the physical copy, but we read it for a book club, and basically the ones who ended up reading the book kind of all just giggled a bit. It was definitely entertaining, which is why I didn't want to give it a 1 star, but the story itself was definitely missing something and did not go at all how I was expecting. It's about these 2 girls on their way to a party in the middle of the woods, and I don't want to give too much away, but basically they run into people trying to cause a little bit of chaos, and I think that's all that I'm gonna say. So if you end up reading it, let me know your thoughts. But unfortunately, that was my worst book of the year. On to the next. The next book I was looking forward to reading for so long, so I was so disappointed when I got to the end and I just ended up not liking it, and that is Midnight is the Darkest Hour by Ashley Winstead. This book was fascinating. Let me just say, if you like Twilight fanfiction, maybe you would be a fan. But it's definitely my worst book of hers that I've read. I've actually really enjoyed her others. It was disappointing and just overall a very dark and twisty but kind of bizarre storyline. So do with that as you will. Maybe you'll enjoy it. And I wish I did. I just unfortunately did not. Next we have Main Character Energy by Jamie Varon. Now to be completely honest, I probably would not have picked up this book had I not gotten it as a blind date with a book, because honestly I think that the title would have turned me off and I don't think I would have thought that it was my vibe. It's not that I had the worst time reading this, it just wasn't great. I gave this a 2.75 stars, rounded up to 3 stars. I did listen to the audiobook and I don't think I really enjoyed the narration very much, but there was a lot of this book that was very cringy. I liked the idea of this book, so I do wish that I enjoyed it a bit more. Poppy, our main character, is kind of the black sheep of the family and wants to write, but she kind of has this very not so serious job. But her aunt has always believed in her, and so her aunt leaves her this trip of a lifetime to a villa in the French Riviera, not really realizing what it is. She is able to inherit the villa if she finishes a book in 6 months. It's definitely a very interesting storyline because the villa is actually a writer's retreat and it's done in a very cool way. Yeah, overall the book, I think just the characters I found annoying. The overall scenery was beautiful, but yeah, didn't really enjoy the characters. Can I just say it's kind of sad, like starting this off on such a negative note, but it's fine. We're gonna get into some good books here. Next we have First Lie Wins by Ashley Winstead. This on Goodreads I rated a 3.75 star. Looking back though, I think I may rate it like a 3.25. It was enjoyable. Honestly, I don't think any of these books weren't enjoyable, to be honest, or at least entertaining. However, I was just very disappointed by this book. I feel like it was advertised as this crazy thriller mystery, but it was just very lacking, I guess you would say. Toward the end, I found myself getting very bored, which is why my rating's very low. But it had some twists and turns, and I was definitely into it at the time. Those of you who've read this, let me know if you guys thought otherwise, but I feel like the short blurb that they had about the book, not like the actual blurb, but the short blurb makes this book sound so much more interesting than it is. Evie Porter has everything a nice Southern girl could want. A doting boyfriend, a house with a white picket fence, a tight group of friends. The only catch, Evie Porter doesn't exist. I don't know, I feel like I definitely thought that this book was gonna go in a completely different direction and it did not, and I was sadly disappointed. And I promise I'm not usually this negative. I feel like this was such a funky way to start a video, but it's fine, it's fine. Now that we're in the 3 stars, next is Something Borrowed by Emily Giffin. I think that's how you say it. Now, as you can tell by the cover, this is a 2000s rom-com, and I don't know if I've ever seen it, but can I just say this book was not as cutesy as I thought it would be. It was so chaotic and toxic. Oh my gosh. It's a very messy, complicated relationship between multiple people, but mostly between 2 best friends. It's kind of a toxic friendship situation, and then there's a guy involved. I probably wouldn't have really gone out of my way to read this, but I did find this thrifting one day, and to me, I was like, oh my gosh, it's like 2000s rom-com type of vibe. So I was like, let me just try it. It was super entertaining. I will say that. It was very, very entertaining, and I think I finished pretty quickly. But yeah, just not very healthy relationships going on in here. Next we have None Shall Sleep by Ellie Marney. I really wanted to like this book, mostly because I really like the cover art. But now when I think about this book, it feels very like eerie and dark. And listen, it's a YA mystery thriller. Of course it's allowed to be that way, but to me, if a mystery thriller is eerie, I have to like the plot. Does it make sense? And there's something about this book that I just didn't really love. I did give it a 3 stars. It was very entertaining. I will say I was bored in the beginning and then started getting more interested toward the end. This book is set in 1982 and it's about 2 teenagers who had survived serial killers pretty much and were recruited by the FBI to kind of help them with cold cases and get some insight on them. It definitely has a very interesting plot. I'm curious about the second book. I might read it. I haven't decided yet and I wouldn't not recommend it. So if this is on your list, maybe check it out. Maybe you'll like it more than I did, but 3 stars for me. Next we have Darling Girls by Sally Hepworth. I was really excited to read this book and it was good. I still give it 3 stars. It wasn't anything crazy to me. I would say it's definitely more fiction, less mystery thriller. I didn't really get like a mystery thriller vibe. It's about 3 foster sisters who grew up together with the same woman, and the woman was not exactly the most fit foster mom. I don't really want to give too much away, so that's all I'm gonna say, but it just kind of goes through their lives now and how their childhood affected them, and then at the same time being pulled back to their childhood to kind of solve a mystery. It did have some good plot twists, so I'll give it that. Moving on to the next stack. Next we have It's a Date Again by Geneva Rose. I had a really good time reading this. Now, I like Geneva Rose. I think that she's a super funny author. I think that she has a really good human element about her as a person that it kind of makes me enjoy her books more. I did really enjoy The Perfect Marriage. The other books since then have been okay, but I did enjoy this. I had a really good time reading it. The only reason why I'm rating it at 3.5 is because it was insanely predictable, like disappointingly so, but I did have a good time reading this. So the main character lost her memory entirely, and all that she knows is that someone had told her that they love her the night before, but she can't remember anything, who she is, who she was, anything like that. And then all of a sudden 3 different guys are in her life and she doesn't remember who she loves, who they love, like she doesn't remember any of it. So she has to start fresh and date all 3 of them. So it was definitely quirky and entertaining, but like I said, just very, very predictable. But I did have a good time, so I would recommend. The next one makes me so sad that it wasn't a higher rating and that I didn't enjoy it more, because I so hoped that I was going to enjoy it, but it just didn't hit as hard as the first one, and that is Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross. Now the first one, whole other story. We'll get to that in a moment. But this is the second book in the Letters of Enchantment series. It was good. Don't get me wrong. It was okay as a second book, but it just wasn't as good as the first one. And because it's a second book, I don't want to give away the plot. So do with that as you will. But let me know your thoughts if you read this book and if it lived up to your hype compared to the first one, or what your thoughts were. Next, we have Hotel Nantucket, which was my very first Ellen Hildebrand book. I own this book. I just have no idea where it went, to be honest. When I was pulling books for this video, I was like, so this book gave me mixed feelings. I gave it a 3.75 stars, but then I literally added maybe because I kept going back and forth with how I felt. Half of the book I felt bored, and then I got curious and I was like, there are so many characters. Then I started thinking about the book when I wasn't reading it, which is always a good sign to me. And then I did end up liking it and getting somewhat attached to the characters, but it didn't pull me in as much as I wish it did. You see what I mean? Like, just all over the place. I feel like most people have already read this book, but if you haven't, it's basically about a hotel and all of the characters who work there are involved with the hotel and their storylines and how they intermix, and there's a ghost, but not in like a super spooky, creepy way, more in just like it adds to the storyline. It didn't really live up to the hype that I thought that it was going to, in my opinion, but I know a lot of people love Ellen Hildebrand, so I will give her another chance for sure. I actually have like a handful of her books on my shelf, but if you have any favorite Ellen Hildebrand books, let me know down below because I do want to try them, and I wanted to read The Perfect Couple before it comes out on Netflix. So yeah, let me know your thoughts. Now, taking a quick turn and getting away from fiction for just a second, my next 2 books are actually Christian books. So the first one is Find Your People by Jenny Allen. Now, even if you're not religious, you can definitely read this. It's a great book about building community. It goes over feeling alone and just wanting to create stronger relationships with the people in your life, even if you've just moved to a new town or you've lived in the same place for however long. It's a really, really great book. The main reason why I only give it 4 stars is because it took me so long to read it. I think that I just got bored, but that's a me problem. That's definitely not really a big reflection on the book. I just happened to get bored with it. I think because in the beginning I was trying to go through it and like take notes, like I was highlighting and, you know, just trying to pull out the big important things. And then I got to a point where I was like, I'm struggling to get through this. I'm just gonna switch to audiobook. That's just my honest thoughts on it, but it is a really great book. Anyone can read it. And the other book is Practicing the Way, Be with Jesus, Become Like Him, and Do As He Did by John Mark Comer, who is, I think, my favorite Christian author. Even if you're not religious, I would say that you can read his books for sure. I mean, they definitely have a Christian undertone, but I will say his book, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, is one of the, if not the best Christian book I have ever read. It mostly talks about Sabbath and how important rest is, but it covers a bunch of different topics, and I think that anyone can read that book for sure. But this book, on the other hand, I mean, the title kind of explains it. The one thing that I really love about John Mark Comer is that he talks to you, not at you. It never feels like he's coming from this judgmental place, which I love. And so I think that if you are trying to grow your faith or you're curious in any way, I think that he is a really great author to start with. And he talks to you like a friend, which, especially in Christian books, that is so important these days. So I highly recommend, if you're gonna start with his books though, definitely start with Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. It's so good. The next book is The Stranger in the Mirror by Liv Constantine. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I feel like I need to lower my rating because it's a 4-star right now. But as I'm sitting here thinking about ways to describe this book to you, I cannot remember it at all. And I haven't really thought about it. I thought that I had, which is why it was higher up on this list. But I can't really remember what happens. I understand like the plot. Basically, the main character has no recollection of her past and has been that way for quite some time, and it just talks about her current storyline and then reveals her past. But honestly, I cannot remember it. I did enjoy it though, and I wrote in my review, what a roller coaster, a bit dark, but lots of twists and turns. So do with that as you will. I mean, for the sake of not being able to remember the storyline, I'm just gonna knock it down to 3.75 at least. And then if it comes back to me, I might change it, but I did enjoy her other book, which we'll get to. Next, we have None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. I did really enjoy this book, but I did read it at the very beginning of the year, so it's kind of hard for me to remember the plot, but I do remember that there were two women who were celebrating their birthday at the same pub at the same place, and they end up meeting and end up collaborating on a podcast situation together, and things just go crazy from there. I remember really enjoying it at the time, but once again, like the storyline kind of gets foggy, but I have recommended it a lot, especially in the beginning of the year. I don't know why I'm struggling to remember these plots though, so bear with me. We do have some good ones in here. And that book I rated a 4-star. Next, we have The Last Time I Lied by Riley Sager. One thing about Riley Sager for me though, I feel like I'm a little bit biased. He is kind of one of my comfort authors because he was the author of the first mystery thriller that I ever read, which was The House Across the Lake, which like blew my mind at the time. So I think like for me, like I said, I just find some comfort in his books, even if they're not always like the craziest plot twists. And I feel like I always recommend his books. The Last Time I Lied was really good. I think this was my very first book of 2024. So bear with me, the plot's a little bit fuzzy. But it's about these girls who went to a summer camp, and our main character shares a cabin with a few girls, and then the girls go missing. Years later, she ends up having to return to the camp, and things go crazy from there. I'm trying not to give too much away because to me, it's kind of fun to go into a book's blind. I feel like I just enjoy them a lot more that way. But I did really enjoy this. I give this book 4 stars, and honestly, I just love Riley Sager. And in my review, I did say that the plot twist and the reveal got me really good, and that it was very satisfying. Next, we have An Honest Lie by Taryn Fisher. Now, this was one of those super random books that I saw in Barnes & Noble for one of those like buy one, get one half off deals. So I randomly picked it up, and I ended up enjoying this so much. I want to say like go into this blind. Even as I'm reading the back of this, like it's still, I can see why I was so confused. It was surprisingly really good. Our main character lives super remote, and she wants to keep it that way, like she's off the grid for a reason, but she is married to, engaged, or dating some guy who ends up kind of introducing her to this friend group where she reluctantly agrees to go on a girls' weekend to Vegas, and then her friend doesn't come back to the hotel room and things get wild from there. But it's definitely not what I thought it was going to be, in a good way though. I feel like that this book definitely was a roller coaster and had me on the edge of my seat. I really enjoyed it, so I do recommend. I will say for the majority of the mystery thrillers that I'm talking about, maybe just double check any trigger warnings if you are easily triggered, just in case. This is one of those books where I would maybe look up the triggers, but I highly recommend mostly just going into it blind. Now, speaking of Riley Sager, next we have Lock Every Door. And can I just say, I had been eyeing this book for so long just because of how beautiful and bold the pink is on the cover. And honestly, I had a really good time reading this book. I rated it 4 stars. It's about this girl who ends up getting an apartment, or watching an apartment for like being paid to do it. It's like a very nice apartment in Manhattan, and the apartment is just has a very dark presence to it. There's very strict rules. There's like very elite people living there, and you just kind of get to see the twists and turns that happen while she is staying there. I enjoyed it. I recommend. Next, we have a very cozy fiction romance type of story, and that is Under a Dancing Star by Laura Wood. Now, one thing about me, I love Laura Wood. I think her books are so insanely underrated, at least the 3 that I have read. My all-time favorite of hers, which is one of my favorite books, is A Sky Painted Gold. There's just something so like Gatsby, romantic, almost Gilmore Girl vibey to it, and like I don't know how else to describe it. It's very adventurous, and it's such a cozy read. It's been one of my favorite books since getting into reading, so I've just been loving her other books since then. I read Under a Dancing Star and A Snowfall of Silver is I think what the other book is called, and so far I've really enjoyed them. I will say the other 2 aren't as good in my opinion as the first one I mentioned, but I did still really enjoy them. And the covers of these are so beautiful. They have that foil finish. I'm a really big fan. I think that they're technically YA. I don't know. I think that they're very cozy. This one is set in 1930s England. Her parents want to marry her off to keep the family estate alive, but she just wants adventure. So she ends up spending the summer in Italy with her uncle, ends up meeting this artist. You just kind of get her whimsical adventure after that. And I don't know. I really enjoy her books. Really big fan. They're very easy reads, especially because, like I said, I do think that they are technically YA, but I do recommend, and I never hear anyone talking about her books, and I just think they're so good. And speaking of YA, next is one of my favorite YA authors, and that is Lynn Painter. This is Betting on You. I love Lynn Painter's YA books. I think that they're so good. I haven't really given her adult books a very strong chance. I dipped my toes a little bit into Happily Never After. I think that's by her. And I just couldn't really get into it at the time. So it is still on my shelf. I do want to read it. It was like a soft DNF. But in the meantime, so far I have loved every single one of her YA books. Like I rate them at least a 4 or 5 star. They're so cute. They're so nostalgic. They're so romantic. They're corny, but not too corny. And I just think that they're done so well. Betting on You was so adorable. It's enemies to lovers. And even the art on the cover is just so adorable. Oh, and this book I rated 4.5 stars. I'd probably keep it there. I really enjoyed it. Next, we have another comfort mystery thriller author of mine, and that is Lucy Foley with The Midnight Feast. I had a really good time reading this. I will say there's something about Lucy Foley books where I have to restart the beginning over and over because I get so confused by all of the characters. It happened to me really hard with The Hunting Party. I did thoroughly enjoy that book though, and I also had a great time reading this, but for some reason, just in the beginning, I really just have issues retaining it. Welcome to the opening weekend of The Manor, a luxury resort built on top of old secrets in an ancient forest. The founder, the husband, the mystery guest, and the kitchen help. Everyone has an agenda, everyone has a past, but not everyone will survive. The Midnight Feast. So it's really good. It's dual timelines, and if you're looking for a good mystery thriller, this has been one of my favorites so far this year. And I rated this 4 stars. Now I know I put Betting on You before this. I'm just going based off of like my current vibe as of right now, the books that I had like the best time reading. That book I read earlier in the year, whereas this one I read more recent, so I think it's a little bit more fresh. So that book may have a higher rating overall, but I did really enjoy this book. Okay, now on to my last stack. Now I would say these are some of my favorite reads of the year. I'm so excited to share. First, we have The Summer I Turned Pretty. I've only read the first one and like half of the second one, but I'm not gonna lie, they're kind of stuck in this box. I tried getting it out for this video and I just could not, so you get the idea. And also the box set is just so adorable. The first book I thought was phenomenal. It's YA. It's a very beautiful coming of age story, but it touches so many topics. I loved the first book so much, and then I started watching the series, and I watched season 1, and then I watched season 2, and I did not realize how insanely sad this series is. I'm very curious about book 3/season 3 because I haven't gotten that far yet. I was not expecting that. Like I kind of had an idea, but I wasn't expecting it to be so sad. I feel like the internet romanticized it so much that I thought it would be a cute CYA series, but it is deep. I do recommend this. Obviously look up trigger warnings. Like I said, it's a bit sad, but it is a beautiful series. I feel like everyone has already read this by now, but I will keep you guys posted on whenever I read the third one. Next we have The Bodyguard by Catherine Center. I loved this book. I gave it a 4.5 stars. It was so precious, so sweet. Basically, she is the bodyguard, even though she looks like a kindergarten teacher, and he is a pop star. He has a stalker situation and just other things going on. Her company assigns her to him, and honestly, it's a great romance. There's fake dating involved, and I just thought it was so cute. I'm so excited to read Catherine Center's other books. I have the rom-commers and Hello Stranger, which I'm really excited to read, so let me know your thoughts on those, but I loved this book. Highly recommend. It's so precious. And the nice part about Catherine Center, to me personally, is that it's a closed-door romance, which is kind of more up my alley. Next we have Kill for Me, Kill for You. I gave this book 4 stars, but I really enjoyed this. In my review, I literally wrote, if you can make my jaw drop with the plot twist, then you won. If that tells you anything, because I feel like I am very hard to trick in a lot of mystery thrillers. I feel like I tend to figure it out relatively easy because I doubt everyone and I doubt everything. But this one definitely had some really great plot twists. They have some very unique, rough situations, and there's a lot of trickery involved. I was very captivated. I buddy read it with a friend, and she and I both just really enjoyed it. So highly recommend. This is one of my favorite mystery thrillers of the year. Now getting to my last favorite books of 2024 so far. This book completely blew me out of the water, and that is Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. I finally read it. I had wanted to read it for quite some time, but I am still new to the whole fantasy genre, so I was a little bit hesitant and I kept putting it off, but oh my gosh, I was so just swooped away by the story. It is so beautiful, romantic. It is dark, but it didn't give me that like dark icky feeling. It just gave me that dark historical feeling, and it has some magical elements to it, and it's just honestly such a stunning story, and it's enemies to rivals, and the love in it is so pure, and I don't know, I really enjoyed this. That's why I was bummed about the second book, because this was one of my favorite books, and I think this is what has kind of opened the door for me for fantasy. I have read some fantasy. I've read like Harry Potter and whatnot, but not like this, and it was so good. So I rated this 4.5 stars, but it is one of my favorite books. There just wasn't that like 5-star element for me, but this was one of those books that I could not stop thinking about, and I just had such a great time reading it. Oh, when two young rival journalists find love through a magical connection, they must face the depths of hell in a war between gods to seal their fate forever. Like I said earlier, I'm really big on going into books a bit more blind, and I feel like this book is kind of complicated to explain outside of that blurb, so do with that as you will. If you have read this book, please let me know your thoughts. I had such a great time, and it makes me excited to actually give other fantasy books a chance, because I still haven't read like the big ones, like ACOTAR or Fourth Wing. I haven't read any of those. We'll see how that goes. I'm a little bit nervous, but we'll see. Now my last book, I mean, it's kind of my last book and a half. You'll see why. The half part actually belongs back with like the 3 stars, but you'll see why I held it to the end. I think this is my favorite book that I've read so far, which is really funny if you look at my ratings. I rated it a 4-star in Goodreads, but the reason why I'm rating it higher is because the amount of times I have thought about this book and have thought about the plot, and I just felt like I was living through the book. I don't know what it was. I think it could have just also been like the time in my life when I was reading it. So take that with a grain of salt. This definitely, I don't think like to other people's standards would be the best book on this list, but hear me out. And that is The Last Mrs. Parrish by Liv Constantine. This book like was such an emotional roller coaster, and you know what's even funnier? I caught the plot twist early on. Not super early on, I would say like halfway or like a little bit after halfway through the book. I had such a good time reading this book that I just highly recommend it, and I'm so excited to read the second one. But with that said, I did read the prequel, which is very tiny. It's like 100 pages, if that. And to me, it just felt very meh. It fell flat for me, unfortunately. And it is also super hard to rate a book that is so tiny. But I just felt very meh. It was very, I don't want to say unnecessary. It wasn't really my favorite. I didn't really think that we needed this, but this story was so good. I found it fascinating. I just felt so connected to the storyline, and I would think about it when I wasn't reading it, and I'm still thinking about it to this day. And I read this back in March, so if that tells you anything. And I went back and forth between reading the book, the audiobook, etc. And overall, I enjoyed it. So I did rate this 4 stars, but I think I would bump it up to a 4.5. But I am super curious about the second book, if it's going to be just as good, better. I don't know. If you've read it, let me know. I guess weirdly enough, which is not at all what I would expect, this was my favorite book of the year. Now, with all of that said, now that we've gone through all of the books, you know what's really sad? I have not read a 5-star book this year. It's really sad. I'm sitting here thinking, no wonder I've been in a reading slump, because I haven't had a 5-star read to yank me out of it. So if you have any 5-star reads from this year that you would recommend, please suggest them down below, because that is not okay. I didn't realize till today that I have not read a single 5-star read this year. I do have some pretty good books on my TBR that I'm really looking forward to, so I am confident that I will find one soon, but this makes me wonder if I should do one of those videos where it's the video stops when you find a 5-star, just to be like on a specific hunt for it rather than mood reading. I don't know, we'll see. So anyway, tell me your thoughts, tell me if you read any of these, and that is all of the books that I've read so far in 2024. So I promise I will keep you guys posted on the upcoming books that I'm reading. If there's anything else in particular that you want to see, let me know. Feel free to follow me on Instagram. If you like this video and you aren't subscribed yet, please consider doing so, as this is my brand new channel all about books, and we're gonna keep it cozy and fun and lighthearted and just document my reading journey and make friends along the way. And that, my friends, is pretty much it. So I hope that you guys enjoyed, and you guys will see me very, very soon. Bye!